Well, I was getting this question in the 1990s, and I said that the West really doesn't understand militant Islam. So I wrote a book in 1995, and I said that if the West doesn't wake up to the suicidal nature of militant Islam, the next thing you'll see is the militant Islam is bringing down the World Trade Center.
Well, former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu predicted something very close to this could happen in his 1995 book, Fighting Terrorism, subtitled How Democracies Can Defeat Domestic and International Terrorists. He wrote of the terrorist networks, quote, such groups nullify in large measure the need to have air power or intercontinental missiles as delivery systems. For an Islamic nuclear payload, they will be the delivery system. In the worst of such scenarios, he added, the consequences could not be a car bomb, but a nuclear bomb in the basement of the World Trade Center.
The Israeli newspaper Ma'ariv has reported Israel's former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has publicly said the September 11th attacks have been good for Israel. Netanyahu said, quote, we're benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers and Pentagon and the American struggle in Iraq. End quote. Netanyahu then reportedly said these events, quote, swung American public opinion in our favor.
Nations, democracies don't go to war easily, and they usually debate and argue before they do. Sometimes they have to be bombed into going to war. In fact, that's what happened in World War II. All of Europe had been conquered. You had to, America was actually bombed in Pearl Harbor, and that was a pivotal event that opened the eyes of Americans, and once their eyes were opened, they gathered the power that is available in this great free nation, and the result was preordained. I think in a similar way, the bombing of September 11th opened the eyes of Americans to see the great conflict and the great danger that faces us, and once opened, then the overpowering will of the majority of the people of the United States, of the steamroller, is inexorably moving to decide this battle.
Mr. Prime Minister, welcome. Why was the United States hit so savagely? What was the objective of these terrorists?
What we're dealing with are terrorist attacks launched by Islamic militants who enjoy the support of radical states in the Middle East. This militant Islam, I think, perverts and distorts one of the world's great religions. They want to reverse history. They really don't accept the last 1,000 years of history in which Islam receded and the West and democracy became the primary force in the world. And so they want to roll back time. And in order to do that, they have to strike at the main bastion of the Western democracy, and that's the United States. And so they hit you now, and they'll hit you again, because their objective is literally to destroy the United States. If they can't destroy it, they can hit it and strike it, and at least crush its will, and bring it to its knees. This may sound fantastic, but that's exactly what they think. And this is inspired again and again by Islamic militant teachings, and of course by the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is what the Ayatollah Khomeini was all about. So they see the United States as the great Satan. We in Israel, by the way, are the little Satan. If Belgium was in our place right here in the Middle East, it would also be a little Satan. And they go after the United States, and they'll go after it again.
Awaken the sleeping giant, don't you agree?
Yes, but I think this is a wake-up call from hell, because they don't intend to stay where they are. They're constantly developing greater technical proficiency. And the radical regimes, specifically Iran and Iraq, that are part of this terror network, are developing weapons of mass destruction. So the next time, as horrific as this attack was, as horrible and agonizing and loss of life, the next time you will see not thousands or 10,000 people die in New York, but millions. In other words, once this Islamic militancy acquires nuclear weapons, they might change history. They might destroy our civilization, our freedoms, our democracy that they hate so much. And therefore, this wake-up call that we've received is a summons to action. It says that unless we act now to dismantle this terror network of terrorist states manipulating terrorist groups in the Middle East and beyond, then our future is in doubt. They have the will to destroy us. They don't have the power today. We have the power today to crush them. We now must show that we have the will to do so.
You wrote in your book 5 years ago, Fighting Terrorism, How Democracies Can Defeat Domestic and International Terrorism. I'll quote, "In the worst scenario, the consequences could not be a car bomb, but a nuclear bomb in the basement of the World Trade Center." You got the location right, the weapon wrong, but they didn't even need a nuclear weapon. Do you really envision the obtaining of weapons of mass destruction by these very same personalities or people like them, and that they would have the will to deliver even an Armageddon kind of blow to the United States?
Do you have any doubt? I mean, okay, they didn't use nuclear bombs because they don't have them, but they used a 350-ton conventional bomb, 350 tons of conventional bombs with all that fuel, and that is far more powerful than anything an F-16 could launch in terms of conventional weapons. So they're well on their way. But it is important to understand that none of these groups, not bin Laden, not the Hamas and Hezbollah and the Fatah Fatah groups, Arafat's own group that formed this network of terror, none of them could act without states, without terrorist regimes. It's important to understand that. These terrorists don't float in the air. They need territory. They need a place to be launched from, to come back to coordinate. That is, those who don't commit suicide, those who orchestrate, plan, execute, arm, dispatch these terrorists. They need a place to be, and that place to be is a handful of states in the Middle East: Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, a few Arab states, and indeed this complex that includes also Arafat's own Palestinian domain, which has become, in fact, the factory of suicide bombs. Arafat has summer camps. Geraldo, he has summer camps in Gaza where Hamas and Islamic Jihad teach Palestinian children to become suicide bombers. He's preparing the kamikaze pilots not only of today, but of tomorrow. So this network that whose various parts support one another, help each other in materiel, help each other in political support in these abominable resolutions they passed in Durban the other day, this network itself has to be dismantled, because if it's not dismantled, the answer is yes, they will develop atomic weapons. They already have ballistic missiles, two of these states. They already have chemical and biological weapons. They're well on their way to developing atomic bombs. And if they do, then history will change. History is not ended, unlike what Francis Fukuyama wrote, with the triumph of capitalism and democracy over communism. In fact, there is a new conflict. And this is the threat of this Islamic militancy coupled with affiliated Arab terrorist groups who seek to destroy the West. Nothing short of that. What we have to make clear is that terrorism is an indivisible evil. It is evil everywhere, and the success of terrorists in one part of the world emboldens terrorists elsewhere. So we have to adopt the same kind of attitude that the civilized powers adopted against piracy in the 19th century, against Nazism in the 20th century. We now have to adopt against terrorism in the 21st century. It is a crime against humanity. It is evil at all times. It is unpardonable. There are no excuses and no concession to terrorism. And the terrorists and those who support them are enemies of mankind. We will fight them resolutely. I think this attitude will produce the necessary action. And I think that President Bush has been wise to call a global war of the democracies against terrorism.
Mr. Prime Minister, shalom. Thank you.
All right, that was from a press conference earlier this morning, or really just brief remarks to reporters from some of the senior cabinet officials, including Vice President Dick Cheney, meeting with President Bush as they sort of lay out their game plan. But part of that press conference was President Bush outlining that Osama bin Laden is now prime suspect number one for these terrorist attacks on our nation back on Tuesday. Joining us now from Jerusalem with reaction to all of this, Israel's former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What do you think of that? We've apparently been able to target as close to unequivocally as we can that it's Osama bin Laden.
Well, I think that he's already proved that he's a killer with the previous terrorist attacks, some of them quite grisly on the embassies, your embassies in Africa and elsewhere. And what we see is this: if you don't stop terrorism, it grows deadlier and deadlier and deadlier. And indeed, as horrible as the leveling of the World Trade Center in New York and the thousands of innocent people who died there, this grisly death, there will be more and worse, because Osama bin Laden is just one one branch of a terror network that some of whose key states are acquiring nuclear weapons. They're developing it feverishly as we speak. So if this is not stopped, it will keep on escalating. And I think the issue here is not just getting Osama bin Laden, eliminating him and his network, but eliminating the entire network before it's too late. And I think President Bush has it exactly right. He's called for a broad and sustained war on terrorism until terrorism is rooted out, and we have to do it.
Do you believe his attack should go way beyond just Osama bin Laden's strongholds? That the feeling seems to be that this should go much wider.
Well, there is no terrorism without states. Let me repeat that, because I think people don't get the main point. There is no possibility of any sustained terror effort against any one of our countries without regimes that give the terrorists safe haven, territory from which to strike, to plan their attacks, to arm themselves, to train their operatives, to hide. All of that is absolutely essential. You just don't have terrorists suspended in midair. And if they didn't have home states to have this kind of headquarters, they simply could not operate it. They'd be eliminated fairly quickly.
Well, who then are likely? Who then are likely culprits? Who are likely host states?
Well, you certainly have one obvious one, and that's the Taliban faction of Afghanistan, because they make no point. They don't even hide the fact that they've entertained
Understood, sir. But I'm talking beyond that.
Well, obviously Iran, which is the fount of inspiration for this militant Islamic fanaticism, which, by the way, does a great injustice to the hundreds of millions of Muslims around the world who have no part in this, who are peaceful and law-abiding. But this is a virulent strain that spews forth right from Iran. The establishment of the Khomeiniist regime in Iran 21 years ago was a turning point in the eruption of this militancy. It's wedded with terror. And that is the consequence of what we're seeing today. Iran is developing now ballistic missiles. Those ballistic missiles can now certainly overreach Israel, but they can head into Europe. Their plan is to have, within 12 to 15 years, ballistic missiles that can reach the eastern seaboard of the United States. They have a very feverish program that they're working on to equip those missiles with nuclear warheads. Do you want to wait for that? That is where the greatest terror will come. So I think speaking about bin Laden is obvious, because it appears that he was the actual perpetrator here. But you have a much larger phenomena of Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq too, where Saddam Hussein is developing ballistic missiles, already has them, and he's developing nuclear weapons. Some Middle Eastern states, the Hezbollah group in Lebanon, and the sundry terrorist groups under Arafat, who enjoy his protection, and in fact where they learn the technique of suicide bombing in Arafat's summer camps for Palestinians. That's where they're teaching children to become suicide bombers. So I think we have to understand there's this network that gives sustenance, support. What sustenance support? Hell, can I be much blunter? I'm holding a cable in my hand that I was just given here entering the studio, in which one of the news agencies says that they regrettably cannot show a picture of a protester or a demonstrator, if you will, in Ramallah, in Arafat's area, carrying bin Laden. They say that they cannot make it, they cannot provide it. You know why they cannot provide it to the various clients? That's what they say. The clients are unable to receive the 35 seconds of the Ramallah march showing one poster carrying a picture of Osama bin Laden. That's what I'm holding in my hand right here. Okay, now you know why they can't do that? Because Arafat is threatening them. They're telling these crews that if you show the truth that we have been supporting this kind of insanity, we've been supporting this kind of fanaticism, we're part and parcel, morally and in many other ways, with this kind of terrorism. In fact, we are the terror base in the heart of the Middle East. That's what Arafat's base is. Then we will shoot you.
All right, but let's step back,
Mr.
Prime Minister. Let's step back from the implications of all of this. Let's say everything you said is right, and you have to go after Iran, you have to go after Iraq, you maybe have to go right after Arafat. I mean, you are talking what the president is talking about: a sustained battle, an outright world war, right?
I don't think it's going to come to the scale of what we experienced when the United States and its democratic allies sought to root out another hate-filled ideology, Nazism, because Germany and Japan were much more powerful than these states. These states are not strong today. They have the will to destroy our civilization, but they don't have the power. Today we have the power to crush this militant terrorism, but we have to show that we have the will. And I think uprooting the terror network is exactly what we're talking about.
But sir, I guess
we can't go back to business as usual.
I understand, sir, but I guess what I'm not clear on is, yes, you're right. I mean, maybe it might not be on a scale of going after Nazi Germany, but there at least we knew it was Nazi Germany. There at least we knew it was fascist forces in Italy. There at least we knew it was Japan. Here, it's like the cockroach there. We kind of suspect, we know, but we really don't know for sure where, when, or how. So it's really an ongoing campaign.
I just disagree. Yes, but I disagree. I think we do know. I think we know very well who practices terrorism and who supports terrorism. You know, in the 19th century, the civilized powers sought to eradicate piracy. Piracy was very cruel, unlike the Hollywood movies. I mean, they'd capture people, they'd butcher them, they'd do terrible things, hold them for ransom and then kill them. And the United States and Britain adopted a policy that says that piracy everywhere, whether in the Caribbean or in the Mediterranean or in the Atlantic, is a crime against humanity. The pirates are enemies of humanity, and anybody who harbors pirates is going to be taken out too. And that's what they did, and piracy became a thing of the past. We have now something far, far, far worse than piracy, something that topples buildings. Tomorrow will topple entire cities and hold an entire civilization hostage, and will bring it to its knees. So the question is, how do you treat that phenomena? You don't say, well, I have to go after the act of piracy that was committed in one part. No. President Bush is right. He says we have to eradicate terrorism. I heard Prime Minister Tony Blair saying we have to eradicate terrorism. We have to wipe it from the face of the earth. Exactly right. Because this terror network has to be eliminated, or we will face nuclear weapons in the hands of terrorist states very soon, a lot sooner, by the way.
Then, sir, let me ask you this. You were not shy when you were prime minister, responding force with force. You were a tough, decisive prime minister. Following you, also following force with force, Prime Minister Barack, now Prime Minister Sharon. And yet we keep having these incidents. I don't know what the answer is, and maybe seeking out, weeding out this network, as you call it, way beyond just the obvious culprits. But to what end? In other words, I raised with a U.S. general earlier, sir, this notion that we attack them. The general says, be prepared for an attack against us, and on and on and on. To what end? Where does all of this go?
I disagree. I think you may have an exchange of blows, but I think at the end of the day, you have to bring down the terror regimes that make this possible. There could be new forms of government emerging there. It happened in other totalitarian regimes. It happened, I gave the two examples of Germany and Japan. After the defeat, democracy prevailed in both countries. I don't know if you'll have democracy here, but the first thing you'll have is life. The first thing is we will protect our life because we will dismantle the engines of death, far greater death that they're building. And the second thing that might happen is that we might forge a path to freedom and to democracy, or more liberal and more humane government in these regimes. I think if we just let these things fester on, grow, and acquire more and more power, they will use that power against us, because the core, the nexus of this terror network are the ideologies of destruction. We're facing a branch of it, the Arafat ideology of destroying Israel. He doesn't want peace with Israel. We could have had peace years ago. It's not a problem. But he wants the hills above Tel Aviv in order to drive us into the sea, and that's what he tells his people. That's what he tells this protester who's holding bin Laden's picture in the streets of Ramallah.
But let's go to the next level.
But I believe...
Right.
But I believe, Neil, please, I think this is important. Understand, they will come back and get you because the Islamic militancy wants to reverse history. They want to reverse the rise of the West. They want to reverse what they consider the retreat of Islam. And so they will attack America because they want to either destroy it or bring it to its knees, and they will attack again.
Will they attack? Will they attack with nuclear weapons? That's a big fear in this country. Do they have them? What do you suspect?
I want to ask you something. Do you think deterrence is going to work? A, they're building it. First of all, to answer your question directly, they're building it feverishly fast, as fast as they can, in Iran and Iraq, and both our countries have solid intelligence on this. Second point, these were people, about 20 people, probably more, by the way, were willing to kill themselves, and in fact, almost 20 killed themselves in suicide bombings. So you have to understand that deterrence doesn't work. Deterrence worked against the Soviets because they put their life above ideology. These people put their ideological zeal, their fantasies, their madness above life itself. So while they might have a tactical interlude of a ceasefire, while the terrorist states might hide right now, while they'll stop using terrorists now, they won't stop in the future. They'll go back to it, because you're dealing here with a mad and irrational ideology that is being pursued in an irrational way. Unlike, by the way, Soviet communism, it was irrational in its goal,
and being
world domination,
and being pursued with nuclear weapons. That you think there's a good chance
but the Soviets
one or
were
two
not irrational.
All right, sir.
Are developing it. They don't have it yet, but they're developing it.
All right, Mr. Netanyahu, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Neil.
The former Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu.